Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well. Anish Majumdar here, career coach to the fiercely ambitious, and I want to focus this video on the topic of how to work effectively with a perfectionist. Maybe you've got one who's a coworker at work. Maybe your boss is a perfectionist. Heck, maybe you are a perfectionist and you're struggling with the limitations of that. In either of those cases, wherever you are at there, I think you're going to find a lot of value from this video. First things first, I want to tell you, this is not me as some expert in this. This is me as a recovering perfectionist. Many people don't know that my wife, Erin, plays a huge role in my career coaching business. She helps lead many, many new projects. She helps clue me into problem areas. She has played a huge role in growing this thing. And I would not be able to do videos like this, among many other things, if it wasn't for her assistance and guidance. But in the early days, it was a nightmare. She would come to me with ideas and I would shoot them down, or I would criticize them, or I would say, you know what, forget it. Just let me do this myself. And at the time, I excused all of that under the guise of no one can do it as well as I can. No one has the standards or cares enough to do it the way that I can. But that's all perfectionism speaking. And your career will plateau if you can't get past that or find a way to work with people who are like that, because you will run into them more and more and more as you rise up in your career, if you're lucky. So it's good to have a battle plan right now. So let's get into it. The first thing to remember, generally speaking, hyper-perfectionists tend to be pretty unhappy people. And I'm saying that from my own experience. What usually happens, and not to be a dime store psychologist about this, but what usually happens for someone who is a deep perfectionist is that they grow up feeling inferior to some degree, or they grow up feeling like something's missing. Usually they adopt the worldview of whoever criticized them incessantly when they were younger, usually a parent or some other caregiver, and then they internalize that unwittingly as they become adults. So then essentially they become the parent, they become the harsh criticizer. And I've absolutely been guilty of that. One thing about a perfectionist you have to understand, if you're not one, is that their internal monologue is usually supremely harsh. It's taken me years to identify the negative talk in my head and realize that that's all just this harsh perfectionist thing that's happening, and that's not conducive there. So know that, usually the person that you're dealing with is not happy inside, and it pays to remember that, that they're not here to make your life miserable. It's just that they can make your life miserable by the after effects of what they're doing. So step number one is to identify what kind of a perfectionist you're dealing with. Because generally speaking, there's two major types here. One is called an avoidant perfectionist, and these types of perfectionists typically have a lot of trouble beginning tasks, actually starting and failing triggers anxiety, so they'll spend a lot of time on preamble, on planning, on making sure all of this there is in place without ever actually getting started. That's called an avoidant perfectionist. There's another kind that's called an obsessive perfectionist, and these people tend to struggle with completing tasks. The deeper they go into something, the more the scope increases, the more complexity increases, to the point where you're just like, can we please just be done with this so we can move on to the next thing, right? Both are very, very troublesome, but they're coming at it from different ways, right? And so here are two quick tips. For people who are avoidant perfectionists, which means that these are people who struggle with getting things started, a big thing that you can do is to always clarify the task and wherever possible, break it down into chunks. If they're having trouble getting started, make it clear. Look, what we need right now, this week, we just need to do this one thing. And then we need to do the one thing. And then we need to do the one thing. So if you can come in and chunk it down so that it's not as imposing, and you can show we need to do this, and let's not worry about tomorrow's problem until tomorrow's there, that can really, really help. For perfectionists who are obsessive and they struggle to complete things, you can focus on prioritizing those elements of the task that are urgent, critical, and reminding them about either prior decisions they made, about controlling the scope, or the things that we have yet to do once this is done. Prioritize what's most important. Out of all the 10 things, these 2 things are the must-dos. And remember, we got about 50 other things to do once this project is done, so we can't hold our feet here. We've got to just do what's most important and get it to that next level. So just remember, those are 2 tips to always keep in mind, depending on the kind of perfectionist you're dealing with here, avoidant or obsessive. Here's another one. Don't internalize their unrealistic expectations. Let's say, you have a boss who insists that every week you give him or her a 6-page report on everything that's done. And the work, and that literally, 6 bullet points, or 3 bullet points would suffice. Well, if you know that, a great way to address this topic is to explain the true cost of what they're asking, what it's going to entail in terms of extra man-hour, time, or whatever, versus what else you could be doing. In other words, taking the tack of, no, I don't think a 6-page report is the right move, I think 5 bullet points are going to do it, that's not going to get much traction. But if you look at it from the point of view of, honestly, the amount of time it would take me to create that report versus, 6 bullet points, I can use that extra hour, 3 hours, 4 hours, or whatever to handle these 3 aspects of what we know is really, really important. So draw the attention away to what else you could be doing with that time, and now you probably are going to have much more of a leg to stand on in terms of controlling this. But don't play into those expectations, Show the alternate, show the true cost, and then show what else you could be doing with that saved time. That tends to help really, really a lot with perfectionists, because in general, perfectionists tend to equate time with quality, right? So really, play into that and use their own worldview against them to a degree. Here's another thing. If you're dealing with a perfectionist in a group setting, okay, 3 questions you should always be looking to ask and push for. Number 1, is there a simpler way that we can achieve our goal? Number 2, can we shrink down the amount of time that we're spending on this? Number 3, what is the opportunity cost of spending extra time on this versus another task? Opportunity cost of spending extra time on this versus another task. If you understand that, that's going to blow your interactions with perfectionists wide open, all right? It's like getting in the matrix and screwing around with the code. It's very, very, very valuable. A quick tip, one other quick tip here. I want to give you as much information as I can here. Set times for emails. If you have a boss, for example, who likes to flood your inbox with 5 or 6 things because there's more ideas and I thought about this and did you do this and do this, don't play that game. Definitely don't go into a thing where you're trading emails. What I would suggest is set particular times during the day where you go through all of your emails and get it down to 0. Having that perspective will allow you to deal with multiple boss emails, for example, at one go and strategically get back to them in one message. Don't play that game. Don't fall into their communication patterns, because those are dysfunctional patterns. And the best way to curb dysfunction is through an alternate. Here's another thing. The secret sauce for perfectionists, okay? There's insecurity that's at work here. So if you can find ways to bolster this person's sense of security, if you can make it clear that I respect who you are, I respect fundamentally what you can do on the deepest sense, now when you disagree with a perfectionist action, it's not going to seem like a summary judgment on this person, So there's a way that you can have your cake and eat it too. And the way to do that is to find opportunities to make it clear, through your behavior, through checking up, through your conversation, that I respect who you are. I respect that you're here and that it's not by accident that you've accomplished this. I respect your competency fundamentally in what you can do. And by the way, taking this approach to this task, I don't think it's the right move here, because we're going to be losing out. Here's an alternate way that we can do it. Here's an alternate way that we can chunk it up. Here's an alternate way that we can solve this problem and make headway in other areas. That's the thing. It's like support their deep sense of self-worth so that you can disagree and find alternates on the more neurotic aspects of their perfectionism. That's what it's all about. That's the key to working and collaborating effectively with a perfectionist. And if you are a perfectionist, I hope you can look at some of these things from the opposite point of view and say, what are some ways that I can do it? Because when I started looking at myself from that point of view, I started realizing that I didn't have to be my own worst critic, and I didn't have to be other people's critic either. That collaboration and partnership will get me 10 times as far as sticking in my own little hidey hole of perfectionism and thinking no one is good enough. That's not true. That's just not true. So I hope that has been helpful, guys. Do keep the questions and concerns coming. I'm always willing to look at ideas for potential future videos based on your commentary and ideas. So please don't hesitate. I love that stuff. I appreciate you guys. Keep fighting hard for a better life. Don't ever take any crap from bosses or corporate interests. They are nothing compared to you, your family, and the reason that you're doing this. You are as strong and as powerful as them, and let's come back to that power so we can take what is rightfully ours. Guys, have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you soon.